Without a voice, you will never be heard. But without a voice, you certainly can be hearded. Without a true voice, you will never be known. But with a true voice, you, I say, can end all wars inside and out and find love and peace and healing. Henry David Thoreau said this best: the mass of men lead lives of quiet desperation and then go to their graves with their songs still in them. If we all want to be heard, then why is it so difficult to speak our voice? Any ideas? What's in the way?
Well, because in my opinion, people interpret what you say, so it's better to listen before you say something.
Absolutely.
The time you started talking without thinking what you've said could cause a lot of stuff.
Sure.
So it's better to just listen first and understand what the conversation is before proceeding.
Couldn't say it better. And that is absolutely part of this talk. So thanks for leaping ahead to about 8 minutes from now. But thank you so much. Exactly right. Anyone else? Yeah, in most cases, we have some fear. Even when I ask this question, fear of not looking good, fear of saying the wrong thing, fear of upsetting people, fear of being canceled, censored, muffled, disregarded, disrespected, dismissed. That fear is really in the way of us speaking our own true voice. So I invite you to listen to what I have to say today and realize that your true voice is actually invited and even necessary, urgently necessary in the world that you live in. And once you do bring forth your true voice, I invite you to get that there's an applause waiting for you, if not out loud, in the hearts and in the souls of the people who are receiving it. Now, I'm Dr. Fred, and I've been a doctor for over 32 years, and I've been in mental health for over 40 years. I'm a world-known psychiatrist. I've had over 40,000 patients. I've taking care of people in all walks of life, in all different areas, all ages, and all the modalities that I could find inside of psychiatry in the United States of America. What else am I? Well, I'm also a 2-time college dropout, among other things. And how did I go from being a 2-time college dropout to being this, this world-class psychiatrist? Let's talk a little bit about how I became who I became. I was born 64 years ago to a family that was in disarray and chaos. They were counting on me to bring joy and communication to a world that was absolutely disorganized. Little Freddie came out, and that was my full-time job and has been since I arrived. I was a bundle of joy for a couple years until my brothers, 10 and 14 years older than me, probably got a little irritated with me. Ultimately, however, they taught me how to be fairly precocious, and I knew how to talk, I knew how to read, and I knew how to do simple math when I entered kindergarten. But what I really wanted to do is learn how to communicate. See, I saw that communication was the effective way to get things done. I would watch these 4 adults talk to each other and things got done, and I wanted to be a master communicator. In kindergarten, I expected that to happen, but instead people were interested in throwing blocks and picking their nose, and I wanted to read Henry Huggins and do mathematics. But I also wanted to throw blocks and pick my nose and all that. After all, I was a kindergarten, and I realized that that isn't where I was going to get communication done. I thought maybe the bigger kids would have it, junior high, high school. In both those places, it was also quite disappointing. So I thought I'll go to university, and that's where I'll learn how to be a communicator. So I went to the university that had the best helmets I could find, that being the University of Michigan, 40 miles to the west. When I got to the University of Michigan expecting to be a communicating genius, I realized that even there, open discourse was not encouraged in the classroom. Instead, we were being asked to just sit in our chair, listen to what the professor had to say, and regurgitate it as well as we could, exactly as we could, and that would be calling us a good student. I wanted open conversation. I knew that that's where the magic was. So eventually I dropped out of school and did what any self-respecting person did in the late 70s, boarding a Greyhound bus and going all the way to Berkeley, California, so I could find myself. I spent the summer in the youth hostel and had a great time finding myself, but no job, no sustenance. So I came back home. My mom told me to try again and maybe try something that was going to be a future job. Well, at that time, computers were just becoming a thing. In fact, the only computer in Michigan was at the University of Michigan. It was a 2-acre facility, and I spent most of my days there actually filling out punch cards to get the batches read. I did that for like a year until I realized that that wasn't going to be my life, and I dropped out again. And when I came home, I told my family that I would never go back to university ever again. My mom again said, well, that's fine, but let's get you a job. And she got me an application at a state mental hospital for adolescent boys. There's where I learned to communicate, and I was getting paid for it. You see, I was actually helping these kids, and I loved that job and kept it for the next few years. In fact, I was a child care worker for the next 13 years. And what I loved about it was communicating just steady with another person was what brought healing. All healing comes from communication, is what I learned. The thing I hated about that job was the way psychiatry was dealing with the kids. When we would say Johnny was up too late, the psychiatrist would come down from his call room and he would interview Johnny for about 3 seconds and interview us for about 7 seconds, and then go to the chart and with his pen, and he would write an order, and then we would have to go get Johnny, hold him down in the quiet room and fill him full of a syringe of adult grade antipsychotic medication so that he was left unable to communicate. If over the next 12 or 24 hours he stayed stuporous, we actually called that a success story. By the way, that's still going on in the hospitals around this country at this very time. I couldn't stand that because I knew communication was what Johnny really needed. So I decided I would go back to school and become a psychiatrist. My brother, 14 years older than me, already was a psychiatrist, so I knew it could be done. And over the next 13 years, that's exactly what I did. I eventually graduated from Northwestern University, and after taking on a residency in Cincinnati, opened up a very big practice that I had for the next 20 years. In 2006, however, I realized that in 1987, Prozac was introduced to the world while I was in medical school. Prozac was a major paradigm shifter. In fact, it changed everything. Psychiatry had now become a field that said if you were uncomfortable, there was something wrong with you. It had become a biological field, a field where chemical imbalances were thought to be what discomfort was about, rather than maybe a legitimate discomfort. Over those next several years, as I graduated, I became typecast as someone who indeed was medicating people, because that's what psychiatry does. And not only was I medicating people, I was diagnosing people as being less than or afflicted or mentally ill. If you can remember, I went into the field so I would never have to do either of those things. So I was living an entirely duplicitous life with each prescription that I wrote and each diagnosis that I made. Eventually in 2006, I decided to back out of that. I decided at that time that I would do something radical and actually pull people off their medicines. I pick and chose my people carefully, and when I took people off of medicines, they got reliably way better. Over time, I realized that that had become my true voice moment. I now had become a healer rather than a doctor doing what was asked of me. I now was communicating with people and healing them through that communication. I ask you now, where in your life are you still being a doctor, doing what you should, rather than a healer, doing what you know is best? Now, when you really look at that, you can know that there are areas of life where you are not being yourself. Don't be upset with yourself. Actually have acceptance and compassion for yourself. We learn very young that being someone different than ourselves has a big payoff. Like if you scream a little louder than you need, maybe you'll get a bigger lollipop. Or if you blame your sister, she'll get in trouble. I know I did that, even for stuff that you do. The crack in the cement, when being different than who you are, grew larger, and we never went back to repair it. So now we're living lives of quiet desperation, often saying and being different than what we know is right. There is good news. This can change. Let me say a few things. Trying to be someone that you're not in order to protect the person that you are is not only ineffective, it's completely ludicrous. Either way, you're going to have people who want to censor you, who don't like you, who want to cancel you, who dismiss you. And if that's the case, you might as well choose to be yourself and bring your real self and have that happen anyways, because it's non-protective. Number two, you don't have access to very much in this world, but you do have access to what you say and what you do. You see, you're not a prisoner of the past that has brought you to here. In fact, you could at this very moment say or do something that's entirely different than something you've ever said or done, and that's great news. Number three, speaking authentically with people is completely contagious and is respected more than agreeing with another. Have you ever noticed that when someone is speaking something different than you, but says it from their heart, that you can actually listen and respect them? Or when someone agrees with you inauthentically, you don't really land it? It is authenticity that drives home this point. I invite you to take that on. Multiple ways to express yourself through creativity and not just voice. You see, voice isn't about standing on a mountaintop and screaming your pain. It's not about telling your mother-in-law how much you hate her. True voice is about really bringing your truth after, as Reddy was saying, after listening to what's needed, listening to what's being called for, listening to what will move the needle forward. In order to speak true voice, you really do need to listen. That is the key ingredient. Applause is waiting for you once you start speaking from your true voice. Don't make large changes, start with the incremental changes. This applause will not only be in the boardroom, it'll be in all the areas of your life. I invented the True Voice methodology. The True Voice methodology is a group of like-minded individuals who are deeply interested in delivering their true voice and in listening authentically to others. This work can't be done alone. I invite you to do it with others, perhaps with your Rotarian friends. Start with just making incremental changes. Say something new, say something different, say something fresh, say something from your heart. I call this our Great Reset. Start with your true voice, step into it, start listening with your heart. When you actually listen and can speak your true voice, you heal the world. Voltaire said this best: I may disapprove of what it is that you have to say, but I will defend to the death your right to say it. Thank you very much. I want to offer you a copy of my book. It's got a wild name. I'm sure it will surprise you. It's called Find Your True Voice. FindYourTrueVoiceBook.com. I will send you that book, and I'll even pick up shipping. There we take a deeper dive into what I mean when I say find your true voice. And we start looking at how how we can work together to have you come to your true voice effectively. The last thing I want to say is this is an urgent message. This isn't just a basic widget. These are difficult times and challenging times. And without your true voice, the future looks pretty grim and bleak. But with your true voice, we can actually make a difference in the areas of life that you think are huge threats, which they are, and in areas of life that bring joy and happiness to you, your family, your friends, your colleagues, and your Rotarian brothers and sisters. Thank you again for having me as one of your speakers. I truly appreciate the honor. And if there's any time, I could take a question or two.
Yes. Right before we go to Q&A, if I may take a group photo for our Facebook page. For 1 second. Okay, everyone ready? 1, 2, 3. Thank you so much. Now we're ready for a Q&A. Who would like to go first? People.
Yeah, I have a question, Doc. How are you able to take someone that is severely I would say affected by depression to becoming, catch up with the normal,
I think I know what you're asking, Reddy, but I think I'm going to bring you right back to the solution you brought earlier. What people want more than anything is to be heard. And so the best way to bring someone who's depressed is to realize that more than likely what's happening is their self-expression is being muffled. And when you can really be with a person who's you calling depressed, you might get that resonating and connecting with that person is indeed the special sauce that heals the world.
Okay.
Thank you.
I do have a question. I was wondering if you have a podcast or some kind of blog where we could view more of your talks.
Sure. Yes, I love giving this talk, and I do have a podcast. The podcast is called Welcome to Humanity, and you can find that in iTunes or Spotify or many other places. I've had about 120 podcast episodes, and I've also been on approximately 70 or 80 podcasts as a guest. So, and we're moving that up as we speak. So there's a real opportunity to capture that. Thank you so much for asking. I have written some articles for Psychology Today, and right now I do not have an active blog, but that's only because I've just pivoted a little bit, and that's what's coming around next.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else has any comments or thoughts?
If you want to get a hold of me, I'm at drfred@welcometohumanity.net. drfred@welcometohumanity.net. I love speaking to groups. If you have another group that you think might benefit from this conversation, sometimes there's businesses or small groups that are kind of muted, muffled, or, kind of like just surviving. A little bit of jolt to remind us that we need to communicate can go a long way.
Awesome. Okay. So I do have one more question. So I have met some people who are very negative, and they tend to be skeptical or always think about the negative outcomes of situations rather than focusing on the positive. Do you have any thoughts or advice on how I could respond or interact better with them?
Yeah, it's a difficult situation. It's not, I think the best thing to get is you can't get hurt by listening. Even when people are saying things that you don't like, you can listen as if what they're saying is their truth. And inside that listening, you may find that you create a space for authenticity and consideration of other ways of being, because they're not being listened to very often, I promise. When people get listened to, when people are connected to and resonate together, it's amazing what magic can occur. I've seen it over and over and over again.
Thank you. Very inspirational. Anyone else has any comments, thoughts, or questions?
Yeah, this is Chancey. Sorry, I was going to chime in earlier too. After the other presentation, get a chance to, but I want to thank both presenters. This is Chancey. I'm also the executive director of the Thai Community Development Center, which is a nonprofit. And yeah, I appreciate presentation on, the water projects in Africa. And I appreciate Dr. Fred's presentation as well. As an organization that serves vulnerable members of our community, such as victims of domestic violence, victims of sexual assault, and victims of human trafficking. And
I'm sorry,
we lost you.
And folks who are food insecure and housing insecure. We're, an organization that has developed a trauma-informed and victim-centered method of serving our vulnerable members of the community. And so I was just wondering, have you done a workshop specifically catered, focusing on immigrant populations with language and cultural barriers? Perhaps we could consider inviting you to have these kind of conversations with our clients, but because we try very hard to help them find a voice, so that they could have a voice, because most of the time they're very timid and they've been exploited, gone through so much trauma. And so for us, it's important that they find that voice. So it'd be great if we could have you, and also just know that we could have our staff interpreting as well.
It would be a deep honor to be there for you, Chancey. It would be my deep honor. I invite you to share the information with Kimberly so that we can talk again offline about what it is that you're truly looking for with respect to a workshop. And you know, how long and where and when this could happen, it would be really, I'm so humbled by even the possible request to be able to assist you in that matter.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Yes.
And I guess I could get that information from Teresa. Let's see.
There's Kimberly's email right there.
Oh, I see. Okay. Okay, thank you, Teresa. If you could catch that for me, because I'm on my phone and I won't be able to cut and paste. And okay, thank you. And then I
Thank you,
forgot,
Kim.
you know, I didn't get a chance that thank you. That I also want to contribute $10 toward Happy Dollars. And happy to have both our guests here. Happy that our LA mayoral meet and greet is over and elections tomorrow. So go vote, everyone. And I forgot to report out that we, along with Reddy's organization, the Pacific Asian Consortium in Employment, that's also a nonprofit, and TICC, we are having a grand opening of the Business Source Center in Hollywood this Wednesday at 9 a.m. So that's now an additional community resource for anyone who wants to start up a business or expand their business or need access to capital and business counseling and technical assistance. All services are free. It's funded by the city, and it's a PACE and TICC Business Source Center in Hollywood, right in Thai Town. That we have a grand opening this Wednesday. So please drop in or refer friends over, whomever who needs help. And it's all going to be basically in multiple languages, but Thai being the predominant language. So the business counselors, ours, and PACE will be Thai speaking.
Thank you.
Wonderful. So for our guest speaker, we usually have a theme pin, and this year's Rotary theme pin is Serve to Change Lives, and I'll coordinate with Kimberly on how best to mail and get that to you. Thank you so much. Please give our guest speaker, Dr. Moss, a big hand.
Thank you. Thank you.